Hey guys, it's been a while, hasn't it? I think this is going to be the first video I've uploaded in about 2 weeks. Sorry, I guess. But Captain Marvel comes out tomorrow, so I thought I would talk about that as a good video to upload because I've absolutely wanted to upload nothing that I've recorded over the last 2 weeks, hence why nothing has came out. So I thought today I would go over my thoughts prior to seeing the movie, and then tomorrow or the next day I would release my actual review and what I've thought of the movie. So let's get into my thoughts prior of the release of Captain Marvel. So Captain Marvel is going to be the first MCU film that has been released in almost about 8 months. Ant-Man and the Wasp was the last movie to be released in the MCU, and that was released in early July. So it's been a while since an MCU film has been in theaters, and I have been so ready to go see another one of these movies. So I feel like a lot of people are going to have that same feeling, and I feel like this movie is actually going to do very well box office and critically. And so the way that I'm going to be doing this video today is I'm going to be listing out some of the things that I think that this movie can do to help it succeed, and some of the problems that I think this movie may have, and some things that I'm worried about. But I'm going to actually start out with the things that I think this movie can and might do well that will help it succeed. Now, one of the first big things that I was thinking of that can help this movie succeed is if they nail the time and the setting of this movie. So if you didn't know, Captain Marvel is supposed to take place somewhere in the 90s, making this the earliest timeline movie out of the MCU. So this is before the first Iron Man and everything. So if this movie can nail this time setting, I feel like it's going to grab the audience's attention just from the sense of nostalgia. And we as moviegoers, we love nostalgia, and that is why all these big time movies are getting these remakes or reboots. Now, this is why we're getting all the live action Disney movies, and we're seeing all these, films that were made originally in the 90s, because those kids who were in the 90s, or those people who were even teenagers growing up in the 90s, they are going to get that sense of nostalgia from these films, and that this movie is also trying to capture on. So if this film can do it well, it's going to grip that audience and make them like this movie, even if the plot is terrible, which I don't think it's going to be. But I think that this movie has something special going for it that not really many of the other Marvel movies really have. Now, the next thing I think this movie needs to do very well is get the villain of the Skrulls right. Now, I don't think the Skrulls are going to have this usual overarching villain arc that makes us want to believe in what they are doing is somewhat right, but rather they just need to have this feel of kind of what Captain America the Winter Soldier had, and it makes us want to think and wonder what is going to happen next. I want to leave this movie thinking, who else is a Skrull in the MCU? Because if you don't know, the Skrulls' main power is shapeshifting. So, if this movie does it right, it might make us, leave the theaters wondering, is Iron Man a Skrull? Is Captain America a Skrull? And if they can set it up well enough, I think this villain can be very interesting and be one of the best that the MCU has to offer. And I think the Skrulls are going to play a huge part in the next coming phases, especially, Phase 4, as Captain Marvel is going to be, I think, one of the last movies in Phase 3. I think Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home are the last two. So this is falling pretty close to the end of Phase 3, which would make this movie the perfect setup leading into Phase 4, starting the Secret Invasion storyline, and then, Marvel can continue pumping out movies like they always do, making them amazing and just making us want to come back for more. And last but not least, the main thing I feel like this movie has to do to be successful is making the character of Captain Marvel relatable. Now, from as we know of right now, is she might be the most powerful hero in the MCU that we have seen. There's hints that she can time travel, she can fly, she can do all these other things. So it is very important that since she is so powerful, she is also relatable, because that's why people love these movies. is even though that these heroes are super and they have all these great things about them, they are still flawed and they can be relatable to us as everyday people. Now, I don't think Marvel is going to have a huge problem with this. They always, do this super well, and that is why people love going to see Marvel movies. So if they can continue this positive trend and make Captain Marvel relatable, I think that this movie can, be very successful at the end of the day. And I don't feel like they're going to have a problem with this one, honestly. I just feel like it just needs to be said, but I think they'll do it very well. Now that we have talked about some of the things that I think this movie can and possibly will do that will help it succeed, I just want to take a little bit of time to, be a negative person for once, and to go over some of the things that I think that this movie might have wrong with it, or problems that this movie may fall susceptible to.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Now, I'm going to start out with the lesser of the two things that I think that the problems might be in this movie. So the first thing I think might be a problem is that they overdo the comedy again. Now, I don't think I really noticed that this was a problem really until Avengers Infinity War, because that movie was supposed to be the highest stakes that we have seen to this point. Thanos is coming, he has all the Infinity Stones, and I left that movie thinking it was absolutely amazing, which is true. I'm not going to sit here and say Infinity War is a bad movie. If you've seen my Marvel movie ranking, I actually rank that as the best Marvel movie. But I also left that movie thinking it is one of the funniest movies I have ever watched. And now, I don't think that's necessarily a super big problem, but it is slightly, because this movie isn't supposed to be funny when you think about it. I mean, spoiler alert, half the characters in the movie die, and that's really not supposed to be funny. When you get to an end battle scene and you have Thanos' army coming to Wakanda and all our heroes are standing up against them, being brave to fight, for all that fighting to stop so Captain America and Thor can make a joke about their beards. That situation, I know, is not going to happen in real life because there's no such thing as like aliens coming to invade our Earth. But that situation, if it was possible, is not going to happen. It just seems like that it is forced. While it might be funny at times, it's so forced that I feel like at this time it's starting to hinder that these movies are being taken, not as seriously as they should be. And I think that this movie doesn't need a comedic approach to it. I feel like this movie and Endgame need to have, they can have some comedy, but it almost needs to be little to none. Because this movie, I feel like, doesn't need a lot of comedy in it to be a good movie. And I feel like Endgame, if it has comedy in it, that movie is supposed to be like a dark setting, after everyone has died that we know and love. There should not be a lot of joke cracking in that movie. So if Endgame and Captain Marvel can have, not as much comedy as we have been, grown to get used to, I feel like when Spider-Man Far From Home comes out, that movie needs comedy, because Spider-Man is a witty superhero. He needs that comedic effect. So if these two movies don't have as much comedy, I feel like that's going to make Spider-Man Far From Home better. I feel like that's going to make Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame a lot better. I just feel like that is the right way to go, in my opinion. So that is the first problem I can see this movie becoming susceptible to. Now, the one main thing that I'm actually scared for about this movie is because this movie is taking place in the 90s, which is before any other MCU film when you're looking at the Marvel timeline, that this movie is going to start creating plot holes in the MCU. Now, this movie is going to take place before Iron Man, before The Incredible Hulk, before Thor, all those Phase 1 movies, and those movies were almost made 10 years ago. Some were made over 10 years ago at this point. And the reason why it scares me is because I feel like they're almost going to really hurt Phase 1 in general, just from this line that is said in the trailer, not in the actual movie, just the trailer. And this line from Nick Fury really scares me.
War is a universal language. And I know a renegade soldier when I see one. Never occurred to me that one might come from above.
Now, if you ask me, why is that line so bad? You know, it's just in a trailer. It's just Nick Fury trying to sound very cool, which I think he does. Why do I have a problem with this line that is simply just said in the trailer? The reason why I have a problem with it is from this clip that I am going to show now, and it just makes me wonder about things. And yeah, let me show you that clip now.
A little twitchy. I'd like to know why S.H.I.E.L.D. is using the Tesseract to build weapons of mass destruction.
Because of him.
Me.
Last year, Earth had a visitor from another planet who had a grudge match that leveled a small town. We learned that not only are we not alone, but we are hopelessly, hilariously outgunned.
So here Nick Fury says that the reason why the Avengers were assembled to get the Tesseract away from Loki is so that they can build weapons to defend them from greater threats that they learned about when Thor came from Asgard, another planet that had them hilariously outgunned. Here's my problem with this. So Thor was made in 2011. That doesn't necessarily mean Thor takes place in 2011, but Thor definitely doesn't take place in the 90s. So here's the thing. The line that Nick Fury says in the trailer where he says, "I never thought one would come from above." So shouldn't Nick Fury already know that there are people or warriors from different planets that have them hilariously outgunned before Thor and Loki come to Earth in Avengers and in Thor? It just doesn't make sense to me. And if you're going to make the argument that, yeah, he knows, but he's gonna hide it, then why did he not why didn't he not assemble the Avengers earlier? Then I just feel like this line alone, if they don't actually say it in the movie, I guess it's fine. If they answer it in the movie, that's even better. But if they just ignore it, then this movie, this line in this movie can destroy the entirety of Phase 1 and why Phase 1 even happened. Because the entirety of Phase 1 is, learning how to stop Loki and his army. So if Nick Fury if he knows that there's people from different planets that have them hilariously outmatched, why didn't he do anything sooner? And that is my biggest problem with this movie, is that it might create these types of plot holes. But other than that, though, I am really excited to see this movie tomorrow. I think it's going to be good. I'm not thinking it's going to be one of the best Marvel movies. I think it's going to be, around that middle range, I think it's going to be better than the Ant-Man's, a little bit worse than Black Panther. But I think it's going to be a good movie all in all. And with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.